Hi everybody, Dianne McKinley here from INcompassing Education. I hope you've been having a fantastic summer. And for those of you that are in other states, I hope you're still having a fantastic summer. Here in Indiana, we are getting back into the swing of things with school starting and all of the fun ramping up. And so I wanted to take a moment to talk to you a little bit about lesson planning. I'm going to be working with several schools this year, specifically on lesson planning, and thought I'd just throw out a couple tips along the way as you're thinking about your new school year. And I know if you're someone who's been teaching for 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or more years, like I have been, you're probably thinking, I already got this down. I know how to lesson plan. You know, I could do it in my sleep. It's the same thing I've been doing for years. You know, I haven't really changed grades, or I did, but I've got it figured out now. I just want to challenge you a little bit to go back and think again about your lesson planning. Lesson planning is so important. And our kids deserve better than just the same thing done over and over and over again. Just teaching straight from a textbook, anybody could do that. And schools didn't hire just anybody. They hired you, a professional who knows how to help reach students and to teach them in ways that they can actually learn, because it's really about the learning. So let's talk a little bit about that lesson planning. When we're talking about lesson planning, you know, if we go back to the day, unless you're a brand new teacher, you're gonna have to think back a little bit. You go back in the day when you used to have to write out these long scripted lesson plans in college. When you were doing your prep in college, you wrote out everything you thought you were gonna say, the kids were going to say. You had different ideas. And that took a really long time. And so a lot of times once teachers get into the classroom and they start to actually plan lessons on a regular basis, they think, oh my gosh, this isn't possible. I'm going to have to just make some really quick, brief notes. And oftentimes that'll end up looking like brief notes where it just has page numbers written down. And wow, that's not what we need. We really need to be thinking about those key components. So in case you've been out of the classroom, or excuse me, out of college for a little while like I have, I'm going to give you some reminders around some of the pieces that you need in your lesson plans. And hopefully you're already doing these things, and you might even think of some that I'm not going to include. I'd love you to add that in the comment box. And so when we're talking about doing our lesson plans, it is so important that we're looking at our standards. And as we know, in this day and age, those have changed over time. Digging in and really looking at those standards and making sure we actually know what the state means by those standards, what it looks like in assessment format, is really important. There are so many teachers I've worked with that will tell me, gosh, I really thought that standard meant this, and I've been teaching it this way, but once I sat down and looked at what the state had out there and unpacked that standard, they really meant this. That's why my kids aren't doing well on the state assessment with that. So making sure that we have those things lined up is super important, and that's really your step number one. And once you do that, it is so important to make sure you map those standards out over your school year. The standards are not a checklist. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to teach it, and then expect kids to really be able to be successful in implementing that, and when they're coming across new information or new problems that they're facing. So it is so important to map those out and really look at your school year and when you're going to be introducing those and how you're going to be cycling back into those standards again to reintroduce them for students. Once you have that map really laid out, it's important then to think about those standards in units. How am I going to introduce those and wrap them around one another so that they make sense to kids? There's connections there for them to make sense. And once you have that piece, that's when your planning really, really starts. So obviously that's a big overarching plan, but we're talking about lesson planning rather than unit planning. Those lesson plans are really key and important. And when we're starting that, we're again looking, what is that standard? What's the objective of the lesson? We don't plan activities and then try to stuff a standard into it. That doesn't work. You have to start with the end in mind. What do I ultimately want them to be able to do? And then say, okay, if I want them to be able to do that, this is what I'm going to plan as activities. And when we're looking at those activities, don't forget, you need a hook. You got to do something, say something, show them something, ask them something that gets them interested. Because if they aren't interested, they're just being compliant. And they're nodding their head and they're pretending like they're listening, and they may even raise their hand, but they need something that helps them connect it so that they understand either what it's for, why it's important to them, how it could be useful in everyday life, Maybe it's not. Sometimes you have to be that honest. Maybe it's not a skill that's that important in everyday life, but it might be a building skill that helps with other things. And so it's important to give that hook to kind of get them interested. And sometimes it's just a question. Other times you can bring in some props or you can show a short little video clip, but that little hook needs to get them invested so that they understand why they want to know about it. You've heard any research on curiosity and how curiosity actually is a platform that helps to really teach them amazing things. When people are curious about something, they are far more likely to pay attention because they actually want to know what the answer is. Once you have that hook built in, it is so important to stick to a mini lesson. If you're a fan of Gradual Release, that's the I do part, where I am going to show you something. And a mini lesson is 5 to 10 minutes max. It is not you lecture for the entire class period and then have them do some homework or do a short assessment at the end. A mini lesson is 5 to 10 minutes of you telling them, you showing them. The next part is then going to be the modeling piece where you're doing it together. It's the we do part of the Gradual Release. So you need a model, and you're going to have them do that along with you. And then your final piece to the Gradual Release part is independent practice. And that independent practice part, the you do time, is when you get to rotate around, you get to help a little bit more for those who need it, you get to kind of monitor and observe how they're actually interacting with it. And then you can't forget the end cap has got to be a check for understanding. So it could be an exit ticket, it could be a little quick quiz that you do, but it's some type of information that's going to help you know that on their own, can they actually do this? That information helps you to look at that data, look at what those kids were able to do in that class period or in that class, and then you can make decisions on how you need to move forward the next day or days to help them to continue to improve. So just as a little cap off to the beginning of your school year, I just want you to go back and think. I don't care how long you've been teaching, look at what you're doing for lesson planning. If your lesson plan consists of a little block on one of your sheets of paper or on your computer screen, and it says the objective is, and your objective is to finish page number blah, blah, it's time to rethink. Kids deserve better than that. Rethink it, re-energize your lessons, go out there and kick it for kids. You're going to do an awesome job. I'm so excited for your new school year. I can't wait to work with those of you who I'm going to be working with. And for those of you that I'm not, I hope that you'll be interacting with us on Facebook so we can hear about the fantastic things that you're doing at your school. We hope that you have a great time. Enjoy your kids, enjoy your staff, and we'll talk to you soon.